All right, there's nobody hanging about.
Hello everybody, welcome to the library tour again. Before we get started, I'll just draw your attention to some notices about next month's council because the speaker can't make it. But we're trying to reorganise some things, so there should be a talk still, but we're trying to get a couple of people to fill in. And there are lots of events going on for Local History Month as well, so we put the details up there, and most of them still got places on if anyone's interested. Some of them are happening here and some in the reference library. Okay, so if you want to book anything, just ask at the desk. I'd just like to introduce you to Karl and Julia, who are going to talk about the Cameraman's story today. Over to you, Karl.
That's very kind. Thank you all for turning up, and thank you for Norton Library for hosting me. Should I sit down or should I stand? Can everyone sort of see me? I'll start at the beginning, basically. I'm a cameraman. I've worked for Sky News, Reuters, TVAM, and the BBC. Basically, my career started when I was 17 years old. My father is a cameraman, and my brother is a cameraman, so it runs in the family. I did want to go to Cornwall and sell ice creams, but he said that was a bad idea. So at the age of 17, he said, come and carry my tripod for me. So in those days, it was a three-man crew.
Before we get started, I'll just draw your attention to some notices about next month's council because the speaker can't make it. But we're trying to reorganise some things, so there should be a talk still, but we're trying to get a couple of people to fill in. And there are lots of events going on for Local History Month as well, so we put the details up there, and most of them still got places on if anyone's interested. Some of them are happening here and some in the reference library. Okay, so if you want to book anything, just ask at the desk. I'd just like to introduce you to Karl and Julia, who are going to talk about the Cameraman's story today. Over to you, Karl.
That's very kind. Thank you all for turning up, and thank you for Norton Library for hosting me. Should I sit down or should I stand? Can everyone sort of see me? I'll start at the beginning, basically. I'm a cameraman. I've worked for Sky News, Reuters, TVAM, and the BBC. Basically, my career started when I was 17 years old. My father is a cameraman, and my brother is a cameraman, so it runs in the family. I did want to go to Cornwall and sell ice creams, but he said that was a bad idea. So at the age of 17, he said, come and carry my tripod for me. So in those days, it was a three-man crew. There was a cameraman, a sound recordist, and a sort of driver, lugger, lighting engineer, dog's body, which was myself. But at the time, it was the miners' strike, and so my first days in the media were actually covering the miners' strike, which was the most frightening thing I'd ever experienced in my life. I don't know if any people can remember it. We're not in a big mining community here, but you know, we're out further up to Seaham and Morton and places like that. So so that was a baptism of fire. Within a month, I was promoted to sound recordist because the cameraman I was working with was my father. His sound recordist had a lump of concrete thrown at him and had his back broken. That was him out of the industry completely.
That's to do with the miners.
Yeah, that was up at Easington. So so within a month of starting, I was promoted and to run, and that was it. But at the time of the strike, it was very violent. There was a lot of hatred. There was a lot of animosity between everyone politically as well as within the communities and the police. And it was just one of those bizarre incidents that happened sometimes in the mayhem. That it was a full-blown riot kicking off, and these three guys came over to us and they knew our names and where we were from and said we thought that we were going in for a real pasting here again. But as it happened, what I used to do at the weekend, we used to do the allotment show. And right in the middle of a riot, these three miners came over and wanted to know if we were the crew from the BBC that was going to turn up at the weekend and film the allotment show. To which we said yes. So we were their best buddies now, so we never got bricked that day. And then there was bottles flying and police charging, and these lads were really concerned because the potatoes all had potato scab and best, and we're here ducking bricks and all sorts, and all this is kicking off. But it was a crazy time. But I'll take you back sort of even further to the days of film. It's only 30 years ago since we all went video when we all went digital. And I started on a Monday, and on the Friday, when I started with my father, he was on film. He was on 16mm shoot with Bolexes and Arriflexes. All of a sudden, technology had made it possible now that we're now being able to shoot on video, and it didn't need any processing. It didn't need any chemicals. It was instantaneous. You pressed the button, you recorded, and what you could look back at what you saw. And that in the industry was so revolutionary. It was absolutely untrue, as you can imagine. So in the old days, when the film, sorry, I've got one of those little sore throats that's about to come on. It's not just there in the background. So in the old days, when film was about and everyone was watching the news, Look North or Tyne Tees with Luke Casey and Mike Neville and Fiona Armstrong and all the others, you had to finish your day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and this had to be done because at 3 o'clock that's when the film had to be in for processing. So whatever the news story was, wherever it was, had to be in for 3 o'clock, so the processing of the film could begin, and then it could be transferred onto telecine and be ready for broadcast at 6 o'clock that evening. So basically, after 3 o'clock, news never happened and certainly wasn't covered. Although to be fair, it obviously was. They'd send crews out and cover it for the later bulletins and things and for network. But we were at a time. Excuse me. We were at a time where there was no mobile phones, there was no computers, there was no pagers, and communication was very, very different anywhere in the northeast. And working for North, my patch was from the borders all the way down to, I guess, sort of Ripon area, North Yorkshire. So any big breaking news stories there, you had to get there, and there was no communication. You literally had to pull over to a telephone box, get a 2p's out and start feeding the box, you know, and half the time the telephones didn't work. Now the BBC actually had a radio system that was very unique to them, and it was the most dodgy. It was like a high band, one of the first CB type radio concepts, and we all had radios in the car. But half the time there was no coverage. So anyone that knows the Durham area and Peterlee, everything drops. There was no signal. There was no signal for half the area. So it just didn't work unless you were up towards Pension Monument or Billsdale. You would get no signal, and people could disappear for days on end. You know, you get called to a job somewhere in the sticks in Carlisle, and literally there's no community. And now we all take all that for granted. So I remember a guy that turned up with a pager, and it was, you know, you phoned this number and then you spoke to somebody and they sent a signal and then it would bleep, and forever we were paid using the pages. And then mobile phones came along, and being in the industry, communication is our business, and so that was most important, that everybody could get hold of mobile communications and phones. I remember the first phones that came along with these great big suitcase jobs like this, and you know, we were scratching that this isn't going to catch on. No one's going to walk around with this, but it was one of the first, and we all used to. I'd come from Teesside. I'll go into a little bit about myself later, but we used to sit in the local pub, which was the Vane Arms in Long Newton, with this great big piece of equipment and ring up the pub. And we just thought it was great that we could actually talk to somebody in the next room. We could, for the sheer hell of it. But though that sort of progressed, and I do remember sat in the car on the A1M doing 70 miles an hour, the legal limit, obviously. And and having a conversation with somebody in the States whilst driving on a hand phone. And that technology just blew me away. It was just from 1 minute you literally last week you were pulling over feeding 2 pizzas into phone boxes, and now you're talking to somebody in the States and they're telling you, you know, where the job was and what we were doing. So that's how quickly technology is advanced, and now it's just, you know, it's come as far as it can go, and we're pushing the boundaries here. What's happening here is that I plug the camera into a laptop and I'm broadcasting onto YouTube. So from YouTube you can put it onto your Facebook page, you can tweet it. Once you've got the link, you can, people now, if you wanted to, you could ring them up and they can watch anywhere in the world. Quality is not particular.
Just looking at that image, is the reverse of what that camera is.
Yeah, I know.
I couldn't understand it.
No, neither do I. It's a technical issue. But basically, that's the picture that we're seeing. And this is there's a 1 minute and there's about a 90-second delay. You'll see me get up in a minute. And this is the picture that's been live. So if you want to, it's on YouTube. So you just go down to, you can embed it on Facebook, Twitter, anything, or just get the URL. You could actually email it now. Just get the number, they click it and watch it. So this is me on my Facebook page. So you put, this is the way forward. It's cheap and it's cheerful. The quality isn't particularly brilliant, and the gear is not particularly sophisticated. The codecs and compression rates and all sorts of things, but fundamentally, everyone's going around broadcasting to everybody these days. So that's so that's where we're at now. So getting back to the history of working in television. So that's where I started from at the BBC. I remember New Bridge Street, which was an old maternity hospital there, and walking in for the first time, I heard my father talk about the studios in Newcastle, and I'm expecting some great big Channel 4 glitzy, all singing, all dancing, and there was this tiny little maternity hospital that was broadcasting for the northeast of England. It was quite an amazing place, to be honest. It wasn't meant for as a broadcasting facility. From there, the BBC moved to what was fondly known as the Pink Palace in Fenham, which was really nice studios set up. And then, as the technology and things to keep up with it, so to do this, even last year, you would have, or 2 years ago, you would have needed a satellite truck and downlinking and uplinking. So the BBC early years were very interesting, not so much for, as well as the technology side of things. Also, the news agendas changed a lot as well. Now people could broadcast on tape. The people were able to turn news stories around quicker, therefore there was more interest in overseas news and things. And also at that time as well, people sort of started broadcasting live, and we were seeing more live pictures from foreign places and foreign news stories that were being brought to us on the TV, which was cutting edge really. So the broadcasting industries have pushed technology quite a lot. There was many stories, and I really didn't know where to start or where to begin. But coming from this area, very proud of it, as we all are. Many years ago, the President of the United States of America came with a plane load of Americans. It was called the Friendship Force. And he brought all these people over and put them with corresponding families in this country, so people of a similar age and similar background and similar work, so they could actually see life from a different perspective and not just as a tourist, which was a great idea. And I still believe the Friendship Force that Jimmy Carter set up is still going strong. So 10 years from Jimmy Carter arriving in the States, we were asked to go, or arriving in the UK, sorry, we were asked to go to the States to do a documentary, 10 years on Friendship Force, what it means, and basically reunite some of those people that were in Newcastle and with some of those people that are in the States, and, you know, and see how everybody got on and if they're still communicating and corresponding. So so we went over to do Mr. Carter and his lovely wife Rosalind, I believe. There was Mike Neville. There was it was quite a big crew, and those days there was a shooting schedule. It was a relaxed documentary, so there was no hurry to have any material back, and we could take a couple of days at the BBC license pays and then dissipate to Miami, but we got to see the country quite a lot. And Jimmy Carter's got a peanut farm down in Atlanta, Georgia, and he's got an exact replica of the White House there. It's a tourist attraction, and people come from all over the world if they're into Jimmy Carter. And we went and we did a lovely interview with himself and with Mike Neville, and we did a piece with Rosalind, and the very, very fond memories that they had about the Northeast. And Jimmy Carter went on to tell us a story that's actually classified, but it doesn't matter. That when he was in the UK, when he came over with the initial flight, he was hosted by a guy called Tony Coates, who lives in Newcastle, who was a civic dignitary. So all his Secret Service guys came over and checked the premises out and everything, and they put in porta cabins, and they were catering for 50 or 60 guys, and it was just the most amazing, complex security operation, as you can imagine, for the president to go anywhere. But they were staying at this lad's house in Hexham, and putting stuff up on his front lawn, and he tells these wonderful stories. I think he was only there for 3 or 4 days. But one evening after lunch, they decided, without telling anybody, Jimmy Carter, the President of the United States of America, and Tony Coates, they decided to pop into the local for a pint. He'd heard all about Newcastle Ale and Newcastle Brew Ale, and he wanted to try it. So they suggested, why don't we just pop out, as you do, down. Sorry, that must be boring. So the President of the United States of America and his host decided to pop into the local, and they walked in, and Geordies being Geordies, and Northerners being Northerners, just took one look, saw who he was, and just carried on drinking. And which obviously the Prime Minister, the President, were found just, you know, in the States, he'd been mobbed in this, but it was, you know, a nod and a wink, and how you doing, and what do you think of the weather? So he's merrily having a chat away, drinking the brown with the lads and the little whippet under the table, and having, you know, really getting into the culture and talking to all these people. Whereby back at the house, frantic phone calls have been made to the States and the White House that the president has actually gone missing. They can't find him. The president is missing. You know, where did you last see him? Well, he was in his bathroom, and now he's gone. You know what you mean? He's gone. Well, he's gone. So there was a genuine panic and a genuine emergency, and I believe that's probably in one of the Twitter links somewhere. So that's the story of the missing president. I believe a few heads rolled over that, and within, I don't know, it must have been minutes, the Secret Service lads just kicked the front door of this pub and ran in and everything, and just saw the president just sat there having a beer, a game of doms, and so we got to see the other side of life, as you do in the industry, and it's not all pleasant, as you can imagine. News is what it is. It's news. It's you cover disasters, rapes, robberies, murders, everything that you see. So you see a lot of these things every day in your work, and you've got to sort of switch off and try and distance yourself from the, you know, especially big things like what I went up to Lockerbie and was only a young lad. We didn't go up there until a few days after the event, but those sights and sounds and smells are horrific. And same when the Herald of Free Enterprise went over interviewing the survivors and things. So it's all right. Everyone sat watching it, but somebody's got to go and do it, and it can take its toll on people. I've not really done that much foreign stuff out of choice, to be honest. I was asked to go hunting bin Laden for 4 months in the Tora Bora Mountains in Afghanistan, but as the borough had just been promoted and Janina was on a roll, I said no, and I genuinely meant it. I thought, no, there's no way. I've got a big problem with bombs and bullets. But I was asked a couple of times to go to out to the war in the Middle East, one of many, unfortunately now. But I'd got a call to go up to Bosnia, and they said, would I like to go up to Bosnia? And I said, well, yes, I suppose you do these sort of things once to see if you can do it, and to experience that side of life under fire. And then they told us that we were covering the war in Bosnia from the safety of an airbase in Italy, which was a great place to cover the war from, to be honest. The pasta was superb, the red wine was excellent. We were actually waiting to go in as the other crews were coming out, but the war it petered out and the interest was lost and it got quite political. But we went to the refugee camps and we were speaking to the survivors and a lot from the airbase and things. And this one particular time there was the minister, the Armed Forces minister came. He flew out and it was all big hush hush, obviously being their primary target. And technically we were in theatre. The airbase was guarded by the Italians. The Americans were over there. The Brits were over here. We had our tornadoes all packed in bunkers and hidden away. The Americans had the A-10 Warthogs that were just lined up right next to a cappuccino. So if there'd been something incoming, the whole lot would have gone. Anyway, the Americans are a different story, but we got on very well with them. So the Armed Forces Minister, he came, and like I say, it was big hush hush, and what he was going to do was going to fly in and basically say hello to the troops, and he was going to be airlifted onto HMS Splendid, which is one of our nuclear submarines. So I was told as a VIP, can't tell you anything about it, but get on this helicopter now, we're going out to this ship. So myself and the reporter, we got on the helicopter because we'd been on this airbase for a couple of weeks, basically waiting for the tornadoes to come back in, and we were there in case something happened. So that was our primary role. We were the pool crew looking for the tornadoes. So fortunately, the lads came back, and we used to go drinking with the pilots, and the war was briefly halted. Several of the pilots twisted ankles playing football and could not fly their jets. And that is gospel. The war was halted, and the doctor put an end to all sports outside. That's probably classified, but hey. So getting back to, so we flew out onto HMS Illustrious, which was our big carrier out there in theatre just off the Gulf, just offshore, sorry. And we all met, and there was the Admiral there, and there was several other ships in the captains. It was all brass and spaghetti and bread and dawn. There's me like this, sweating, smelling, not washed for days, just sitting around air bases. And so I was introduced to the Armed Forces Minister, and we all had cocktails and canapes, and he was telling everyone, his PR people were saying that he was going to fly out on a helicopter first thing, be winched down to HMS Splendid, and he was going to stay on the submarine, and then they were going to go and do their own thing. So it was all top secret. They couldn't tell us where we were flying to, how long we were flying, where we were being dropped off. All I knew that I was getting pictures of the Armed Forces Minister being winched onto a submarine. So we spent the night on Illustrious, and got a knock about 3 o'clock in the morning saying, right, we're going. and obviously there was no point asking where we were going. We just went. In fact, I just went. The reporter stayed on board. But the previous evening, we'd been in the boardroom having drinks with the captain and the admiral of the fleet, which all sounds very grand. And indeed it was. And I was just after, give me a pint of Stella and let me stand in the corner. But the Armed Forces Minister was telling his PR people and the admiral and the captain that what was going to happen. And I said that, having filmed in helicopters a lot, that it's very difficult to get a shot looking straight down at the minister being winched onto the helicopter. So everyone sort of paused and said, so they said the shot wasn't going to be particularly good and not what we were after. So the admiral said, well, what sort of shot would you like? So I said, well, ideally about 200 feet. I'd like to see the helicopter winch the minister down onto the submarine and look at it from about 400 yards away. So the admiral turned to the captain of the ship and said, get this man a helicopter. And I thought, wow. So I thought, wow, wicked, I've got my own helicopter. And it was a Lynx. I'm a bit of an aeroplane helicopter buff anyway. So I get a knock on my, I just laid on the floor that night in some junk cupboard. They said that those big ships may look big, but they're not luxurious at all. I don't know how those lads put up with it. The conditions, they were terrible. There was anyway. So I got a knock on the door and was taken to the deck, and there was this really disgruntled looking pilot who was called Stu, and it was his day off. And he wasn't very happy because he shouldn't be flying, and who the hell was I? And I said, I'm just a cameraman, mate. So I said, I explained the story that I needed another helicopter. And halfway through, I realised I shouldn't have just said nothing. But by which time it was too late. So we took off. The minister was on board Sea King, and we were following in a Lynx. Well, the Lynx is a very fast helicopter. So we were just tootling about, basically. And there was myself, the pilot, and the co-pilot. In helicopters, the pilot sits in the right hand seat. In civil aircraft, it's the left. So I was talking about, as you do, football. I said, where are we going? And after about an hour's flying, and the three of us had finished talking about football. So I started asking little technical questions like, well, how long can you fly for before you run out of fuel? So he said, don't worry about that, 3 hours. So I said, that's fine, great, excellent. So we still hadn't been given the coordinates of where this sub was, in case we were being tracked or whatever reason that the Serbs or Kosovans or whoever were going to have a little pop. And so we were just flying along, and then the sub came into view, this amazing black shape on a turquoise sea. It was a real sight. And the minister got winched down, and I got the picture, and it was all good, and everyone was very happy, and I thought it was a really, really fantastic time. And we turned around to head back, and I said to Stu, I said, we've been flying now for 2 hours, Stu. And he said, yep. I said, well, which means it's 2 hours back again, Stu. And he said, yep. So I said, well, call me Mr. Silly Pants, but where do we go for some fuel? And what I didn't realise, not being in theatre, is that helicopters, they just land on each other's ships, and they just get fueled up and just carry on. So it's not like there was a big problem. He knew where the fleet was, and there was ships there. So he knew there was one of several we could land on to get some juice. So he said, right, so we'd finished. I got my pictures. The Sea King disappeared back to Illustrious, and we had to go to HMS Newcastle to get some fuel. We couldn't make it back to Illustrious, so that wasn't a problem. This is what could possibly go wrong. So as we're flying along, Stu, the captain, the pilot, spots a pod of dolphins. So he said, do you fancy going down there and having a little blast about? So here we are in the middle of a war zone, in theatre, playing around 50 foot with bottlenose dolphins, a massive. It was the most amazing thing to just be down there, and I'm sure they were looking up this massive pod. It was enormous, and I'm just thinking, well, this is pretty good. This is. I got more enjoyment out of the dolphins than I did the minister, but I thought they're never going to believe me back in the vein when I get back and tell them this one. So anyway, we go towards Newcastle. Newcastle was busy. She couldn't accommodate us, so we went on to the next aircraft carrier, which was the French Foch. When planes come back in, the recovering aircraft. So these lads had all been out on a mission, dropped their ordnance, flying back on, couldn't take us. We couldn't get on board. They were recovering their own people first. So then, by which time there was a little, which was the fuel light, and it was like, shit, the fuel light's on. I'm thinking, I've got no one to tell you. I'm sure they know. And it was literally, half full. It's just like that. And I'm thinking, God, it's on. It's on. The fuel light's on. So I said to Stu, Stu, the fuel light's on. He said, oh, don't worry about this. Don't worry about it. So there was another ship, and I'm panicking a little bit about this now. And I believe she was called HMS Grafton. So we saw HMS Grafton, and we're going down, and we're going to land, and we land on Grafton. He flies around, and I'm thinking, great, heart attack time over. 3 cups of tea came out. Couldn't get the fuel into HMS. Couldn't get the fuel from HMS Grafton through the hose into the helicopter. The links. It was the wrong fit. Now that's the story I was told, but we couldn't get any juice. They just wouldn't go in. So I'm finding this quite unbelievable. Thinking maybe they checked that out before we went to war. One of those little must-do things. Tick. Can we fill up the helicopters? So we took off from the Grafton, and it was the Coventry that we were told we were flying towards, that she'd accommodate us, fill us up, and we'd get back to the Illustrious sometime before tea. So we're flying towards the Coventry, which was like right then, the fuel light's on, and there's like a bing, 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 and I'm thinking, this is really not good, this, And, all of a sudden, as we were flying in, there was this bomb, and the alarm started going off. And I'm like, shit, we've run out of fuel, we're going to ditch. And I'm panicking because there's just the 3 of us, and I'm strapped into the back of the links with the doors open, thinking, I've seen the underwater training when it goes over, but I'm thinking, hold your breath, you've got to count, wait for the rotor blades to stop before you sink, you've got to wait at the bottom, then I'm thinking, with it, this isn't going to look very good. So there was all flak started when those little flares came off, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? And I said to Stu, what's going on? He said, don't worry, we've just been locked onto him. And I went, what do you mean? Just at which point the comms when he pulled them, because he didn't want to hear what was going on. But so apparently what had happened was that nobody had told the Coventry we were coming for some fuel. So she took us that we were hostile incoming, locked onto us, and we're there. And of course they're saying mothership and stuff, confusion in the war zone, and they've got a fast moving object coming in at like 200 feet at like 250 miles an hour, and they think they're going to get hit. They've locked onto us, at which point everything lights up, all sorts of things start kicking about. And I'm just waiting for a flash, and I'm sort of shaking, thinking, well, may as well record myself. So I'm recording, and these crazy things go through your head. I'm thinking, what happens if it comes from the other side? I'm going to miss it. And I'm thinking, it doesn't really matter, does it? So all hell kicked loose, and we did eventually get on board and landed, and those lads were taken away for a massive debrief, and I don't know what happened, but so that was sort of my flying experience and war experience. But talking to the lads that really went to the sort of into cookies and all the enclaves and things, and seeing the atrocities, it's something that a lot of them have got to carry about with them as well for life. Those memories are there. I've got a good mate who's a cameraman, who used to work for CBS down in South Africa, and he covered the genocide, the Tutsis and whatever, but mass killings. So these guys get about and cover the news and bring it to you, and it's all sort of it's all very interesting how it happens, how you get there, the whole process of getting gear abroad, the whole process of getting your pictures back. Do you use a satellite? Now you just edit it away, and you just email them. It's like shoot, edit, email. This technology, you see, this is exactly the same setup as they've got in Nepal and places where they can't get really good signals. They just put a dongle into the Macs and use the satellites. So the world is changing and becoming smaller, and communications are important to everybody. Excuse me, I was quite late to sort of embrace the technology. Well, dragged and screamed into it like everything else. If you don't need to learn something, why bother learning it? It's only when you need to learn to do these things. So there I'll have a little think. Is there any questions? Well, I'm going to talk about Sky now. Is there any questions? Anyone has thought about any? Am I going in the right direction? Is there anything you want to hear about? More news, or more technology, or more just stories, or should I just carry on rambling? All right. Well, that was just the BBC. That was just 4 years, or 23 years at Sky News. Where do I start there? Actually, a lot of that was during the wars were during when I worked for Sky. I started there in the December. They were started broadcast of '89. They started, I think, about March time. And 24-hour news. I mean, who's going to watch that? That's just not going to take off, is it? But they were at the very, very forefront of technology, and they were pushing boundaries. And I've got some very talented colleagues there. And the whole thing about the news industry is being first with the news. If you're not first with the news, you're second. There's no prizes for that. Everybody wants to say that they're first with the breaking news. So literally, you'll be outside of a court and there'll be a verdict come through, and it's the first one to break the verdict, guilty or not guilty. That 2 seconds can make the difference between being channel of the year and not. Yes, first to break the news. The margins really are that fine. And of course, the bosses are sat there in their offices watching all the other feeds. Why haven't we got an interview with him, and why didn't we do this story? So the news agenda was generally led by the news. Now the news agenda, and these are all my personal opinions, is being led by us, the people. What's trending, what's popular. Sky's saw this years ago. They were looking at broadcasting live on the internet, and we were told that by whatever date 50% of people will be accessing their material online, and you're thinking, is it really going to take off? Is it really going to be that big, the internet and everything? And it is, and it was, and they had amazing vision. So they pushed the boundaries with the broadcasting and the news coverage, and getting things on the air first, which is what it's all about, really. So Sky have got 5-6 bureaus throughout the world, and basically the world's just like with the BBC and ITV. There's a Europe correspondent and an Asia correspondent, and I think the news comes and goes in cycles. Sometimes it's busy over there, and sometimes people in Moscow might not do anything for months. But what I have noticed, and I don't know if it's just me, but looking at the way the weather is and the global warming and the effects over the last 5-10 years, the amount of flooding I've done in Cumbria, down North Yorkshire, you think, did we always have that amount of rain? Was there always that amount of flooding? And is it the build, floodplains? Is it drainage problems? Is it global warming? But the floods over in Cockermouth were quite an amazing experience. It was just one of those days where after 2 days of rain, I just knew that I was going to go out and start covering floods. Nobody knew where. Normally some parts get it worse than others. And the south had been hit quite a lot over the years, and I guess it was the north's turn. And all day I'd been told, no, we're not interested in the weather. I'm saying Teesside's underwater. So if Teesside's underwater, it's going to be worse over in the west, where it's predicted to be very heavy. So about 4 o'clock in the evening, I got on the road and was told to go over to Cumbria. So we all in Keswick, and the water's bursting, and its banks, and it's bridging, and it's bad, but it's not too bad. And then round about 11 o'clock, we all got a call to go to Cockermouth. Cockermouth's underwater. So we're all on the sat nav and things, and it took Keswick to Cockermouth probably 20 minutes. It took 3-4 hours. The roads were just impassable. I mean, Cockermouth was completely isolated. We managed to get they started broadcasting, and I managed to get in about half an hour after them. And I was talking to the lads on the phone. The conditions were as bad as I've ever seen in my life. The rain was horizontal. The wind was incredible. You couldn't stand up. The roads were completely blocked. There was cars abandoned, floating, and everyone's getting out of Cockermouth. And of course, it's the cameraman, and we're going into Cockermouth. It's the same with any disaster, any emergency. Everyone runs away, but we run towards it. So as we were getting into Cockermouth, it was just one of those scenes that you see out of a Rambo James Bond film. It's amazing. There was the rain's coming down, the sirens are away. The sea of flashing lights. The helicopters were literally 50, 60, 100 feet, pulling people out of buildings. We started broadcasting, and they were pulling people out of the shop windows, or they were expecting a large loss of life. And thank God there wasn't. And the scene, I remember looking at Cockermouth High Street. There was a speedboat going down there, and there was a speedboat going down there, and a guy hanging off a winch from a helicopter. And you sort of sat there, and the adrenaline's pumping, and it's kicking in, and you're going to get the right shot. You're in the right place. You got to think about your own safety. The police lads are doing their own job. Cars, vans, helicopters, everything flying all over the place. And it was just one of those amazing experiences that you see and you try and capture, and you just concentrating on holding the camera steady. You're just holding it, just letting the action take place in front of you. And then it just went on all night. It was just the most horrendous flooding I've seen. The following day we managed to find a hotel, and the bridge we crossed to get to the hotel had gone in the night. We couldn't get back out the way we were. We found that there was a police officer had swept to death further down. It was one of those nights, but they were very, very unlucky, and there was a lot of damage, but it could have been a lot worse. There was a lot of tourist buses on those little humpback bridges over there. All sorts of things could have happened, but it was a real wake-up call. And then the following day, talking to people that are flood victims, that just never leaves you. They lose the memory, they lose the photographs, they lose the wallets, everything, and it's just all been washed away. Literally, they've got nothing. It's very distressing, but you sort of you cope with it. You do the job and you carry on, and you just think, well, this whole weather system, and tsunamis. And I remember the one at the Boxing Day. Sky had many people out there from bandit at chain all over, covering those horrific pictures. But it's not all doom and gloom. That there are lighter sides of the news. There's the lottery winners. There's the lucky punters. There's stories that I don't believe. The guys walking into Barclays Bank and finding the safe open, and just stuff that you see in the newspapers. So there are lighter moments of the news, but it's generally pretty all miserable. But you think, what am I doing this for? What are you doing today? And another quick little story. There was a guy from the northeast who decided to swim the English Channel, but he decided to swim it both ways, from England to France and then back again, do the double crossing. And these swimmers do this and break records. So we set off. Went to Dover, and we had to sit around for 3 or 4 days waiting for the exact right conditions, the right tide. Everything's got to be perfect. You've got to have the right people on board the boat, and etc., etc. And it was a tiny, tiny little boat. And the guy took off swimming, and he was expected to swim to France in about 7 hours, and he was expected to swim back in 9. So it was a pretty old swim. Anyway, halfway across the channel, in the middle of the night, and everyone's been sort of boating on, and you looked out in the dark, you just see these enormous figures, and you're on this tiny little boat that's only got about a 6-berth little cruiser, and these enormous figures mid-channel going at the same speed as somebody that's swimming. Anyway, he pulls both his groins, so he's there, he's screaming in pain, and I'm thinking, great, we can get back to the hotel just before breakfast. So his coach says, well, what do you want to do? He said, I'll just swim on and use my arms. So we're like, did he just say he's going to swim on and use his arms? So we're like, yeah. So now this poor lad, and I should know his name, but I can't remember it. It's in the book, I think. He pulls both his groins and starts heading towards his coach. He said, yeah. 17 hours later, he's still there, giving it this. But he makes it. He gets to the other side. We couldn't actually get into France. Not that we had no visas or anything. Not that would have stopped us. But he just wanted to touch French soil. But we couldn't get over the breakwater. And he makes it into France. And it takes him 17 hours. And the achievement was just amazing. We were elated. The guy we brought on for the lights I've never seen anyone that colour before. It was green, and he was so seasick it was untrue, and we sat on deck chairs that were awash, but this lad was just had this amazing euphoria. It was just this great buzz, and we'd all literally been awake for a few days waiting to see if this would happen. So we tootled on back, and we get back to Dover, and it was at the time where they'd got a BBC Newcastle had got a message to us in Dover. We were well out of our patch, and can we go to Dale? And we said Dale from Dover was just round. Literally within several hours of arriving back on shore, the Dale bombing had gone off. So we all had to go around and cover that aspect when the IRA were blowing bits and pieces up. And there was a lot of that sort of, especially in the early days with the IRA and the lads and the victims and the funerals. There was all that to cope with. There's a lot of lads from the north that are in the forces. So one minute you're having a jolly old time thinking, oh, this is great, and then the next, you're thrown into it, and you've got to get your head on and react and be aware. For everything really, it's always one of those situations, being a cameraman, where you've got to think, you've got to be conscious of who's around you, where you're at, what environment you're in, who you're speaking to, what the potential dangers are, what the risks are. I got a call to go to the Meadowell riots when they went up on a Monday night, and basically 2 young lads had been killed, and the police had been following them. And from there stemmed the riot in Meadowell, and I got up there having played five-a-side and had my joggy bottoms on and my trainers and a t-shirt and my camera, And I turn around this corner and there's three lads on the bonnet trying to put the windscreen in with baseball bats, and I'm thinking, I'm just not welcome here. So I'm ringing the news desk going, look, it's really kicking off up here. You know, the setting things are like, the helicopters are out again, people are running around with baseball bats. If you've got a camera, you're a target. This is really a bit crazy. So you do what you do. You go back in there and get the pictures. And then the following night it escalated and it just got worse. And then by the Thursday night, the whole of the West End of Newcastle had gone up. Out towards the General Hospital and Westgate Road, and it was like being in one of those movies again. The post office is flaming, the petrol bombs are being thrown, kids are setting cars alight, and you're in the thick of it, and you're getting the pictures and thinking about your safety. Have you got an exit plan? You know, if this car gets stopped, can we get out where we're going to run to? So you've got to take all these considerations in when you put yourself into these positions. And sometimes you just can't legislate for people throwing a petrol bomb at you or a brick at you or putting a window through. So after about the second night, we were going up to Hertz in Newcastle and hiring cars. We were going through that many, with the windows being put in and the tyres being slashed. So we were Hertz and Avis. We were going back there, sending the producers every day to get a new car to be smashed up that evening. But I'm sure they were insured. I'll deny all that. So that was one of those experiences where you sort of think, yeah, your life is, you know, is in danger. It doesn't take much to be hit on the back of the head by a brake. It doesn't take much to be run over, whatever. And the Bradford riots were just as bad when Bradford kicked off down there. It was just one of those terrifying events that just you just experience, and you wake up and think, did that all really happen last night? You know, did I really witness all that violence, destruction, all the hatred and animosity? You know, these people that are rioting, they've lost control, they've lost it, and that animal instinct comes out, and you sort of see it, unfortunately. But the red mist comes down, and it, you know, and with a camera, a lot of cameramen become targets. So there it is. I could ramble on for days, but what I'm doing now, I'm just doing some freelance work. I'm doing some freelance for the BBC Look North. I'm shooting commercial stuff for online. I'm also heavily into art. I'm an abstract artist. And for my first exhibition, I hired an elephant and walked it down the High Street in Yam High Street. It completely overtook the exhibition itself, but so I'm really into my art big time, and my stills photography. So anyone that's camera wise, they tend to be on the arty side of life, that they enjoy stills and, you know, taking nice pictures and framing things. And so yes, I did a little video for, I've actually done a little video for the priest, Rev Martin. When he came in, I popped down and we took some pictures of the toddler group and put him so he could tweet it, so he could let people know he was about and doing his thing. And a little pop-up art exhibition in his hall on the back of that. So we got 7 artists together and had a little pop-up art exhibition. So and I've shown in the King's Coffee House my stills. So I'm really into the still side of photography as well. It's nice just to disappear into the woods and take the old camera out, and wildlife and birds I'm into, flights I'm sort of into, and that's it really. So it's been an hour.
Can I just say thank you, Karl, for an interesting insight into the world of the cameraman and the unusual appearance of a camera. And we're not terribly used to cameras in here, are we?
Well, it's a first. I don't know if this is going out or not. It says it is, but who knows? So if you'd like, I'll give you all a card and check my website out. There's a link to my book on there, and also the video will be on there as well. You'll have to go to the YouTube channel, but that should be up there if you want to see yourself, and no doubt there'll have been 3 or 4 people watching. But I just thought it was an interesting thing to do. Not that I'm massively publicity hungry. People that know me, I like to live below the radar. But by the same token, there's a lot of lads in the industry who bring you pictures who don't get the credit they deserve. And so, you know, maybe I'm standing up a little bit for those. Yeah, have a little look at the website, and like I said, there's a book link on there if you're interested. And I'm actually working on my second one. I did my first shift for 26 years for the BBC 3 weeks ago, and they said, could you go to being freelance? I've obviously done other things, but they said, could you go out onto the Dogger Bank? So I said, yeah. I said, it was the same producer, it was the same editor of the day that sent me on my last job for them 26 years ago to Sedgefield Racecourse. He said, Cutsy, can you go and take some pictures of illegal scallop boats on the Dogger Bank? So I said, I'd love to. So we took off, and that was really, really interesting. I managed to drop my little Canon power shot onto the Dogger Bank, 10 miles out of Whitby, and it's there being eaten by crabs as we speak. But no, that was an amazing trip, and I spent a couple of days last week doing the election up in Sunderland, which was the first count, the first MP returned. And they always make a big thing about being the first, so we sort of knew we were going to get an early finish, to be honest. But by the time you get back, it's still 4 o'clock in the morning, and the lads are all on Facebook and Twitter, and some of their results haven't even come in yet. So I'm thinking, well, that's not too bad. Some of those lads put in a sort of 48-hour shift for that. So I've done, like I said, I've done 1 or 2 little videos for Stockton, and I'm not going to get into the politics of Benefit Street, but there's 2 sides to every story, and I just took some nice pictures of Stockton in the interest of balance and fairness to say, yes, those characters, those people are in every town and city in the country, but this is the real Stockton. That's on the YouTube channel as well. That's had about 500 hits in a couple of days. Yeah, I like to talk up my area, where I'm from. Very proud of being from Teesside, and it's been lovely to talk to you, and thank you for having me along. Cheers. Cheers. Yeah, there's the sort of book details on the website and things.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Oh, fine.
Yes, I think
Yes.
thank you guys. I think there's so many images on the television, the whole shock factor. My friend, yes. There was maybe I don't know, 20 or 30 people. So, on the throne, when I was it is amazing. Without me realizing, it's just a case of so I went down there first. I think I'll do tea, coffee, no, not the job. This one's got sugar. We expect to see thank you very much.
Well, we've done it.
I think some cameraman would
Go for it.
go for an
And then it was take it off.
Which is just the same as the old one.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, very pleased. She went down in January.
We talk about the girlfriend and the girl.
Quite unusual these days.
One day,
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I just thought these people. And I think these
Yeah, imagine there would be a strong sense of community.
Well, I got to.
Oh, yeah.
I may have told you. I got to stop. Well, that nearly closed down about 6 years ago.
Much trouble, what?
The call to
The thing
come
I
and
used to say that.
take it over. We haven't had it for a couple of years.
The ones in the.
Prime Minister would call them because these days.
Yeah, I mean, the people.
But he came.
But
I was on the back of the
Unbelievable.
voted whether to keep going. There was one vote in
That's a lot
favour.
of people watching television.
And then Alan became. He thought, it's easy to make it use of people. Another chap was about my age. And they rely on photograph. He died. Yeah, it's like that, really. But they say that about 200 titles the next year. Around. The local news and certainly the police were asking for the young one, video to consider prosecution.
No, it's going to be boring. You watch one day.
having an ordinary, happy, peaceful life. Take the joy, I didn't want to do
irritating all these things.
Anyway, finally got into
We used to go to
Thanks for coming, I appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Oh, yeah, hello, good to see you.